Kyrie Irving called it a bitter ending to a really positive journey for the Mavericks. Luka had 28 but shot 2 for 9 from three-point range, while Kyrie had just 15 shooting, 5 from 16 from the field, which continued his struggles in Boston. Here's Dallas postgame.
You know, now that the series is over, how much were you hurting?
It doesn't matter if I was hurt. How much was I hurt? I was out there, tried to play, but I didn't do enough.
Yeah, failing at this stage definitely sucks. It's a bitter feeling because you want to keep playing and you feel like your best game is coming up next, and the shots that you shoot next game are coming up, and now we got to wait. I think 2.5 months, 3.5 months to the new champion. Gets a chance. Yeah. So we've been able to celebrate our wins, but also learn how to celebrate our losses too, and how to grow from that.
Okay, Andrea, you're up first. Do you feel like Luka's finals performance tarnished his image?
No, not at all. I think it helped Luka's image. This is his first finals appearance, and I know we gave him a ton of grief for Game 3 and his performance and falling apart and getting all over the referees and not being engaged with his teammates at all. We gave him absolute hell for that game. But the only reason they were in those games was because of Luka. The only reason they were in position in that game was because of Luka and his response in Games 4 and Game 5. You can't say enough about it. Yes, he responded in Game 4 at home with a great defensive performance, but even in Game 5, there were calls that didn't go his way. I know there were calls that he didn't like. He spoke to the referees at times, but I still saw defensive effort and offensive effort. He did not go down quietly. He never quit. Even at times, they're down 20, and Luka makes a sidestep 3, and you're like, oh, that's a great play by Luka. It's not enough, but he was still out there trying to make great plays. He still sat in a stance in Game 5 at Boston. I think this is an experience that we can respect Luka for in the way that he responded, and one that he can build off of. I expect him to come back more in shape, ready to defend, and ready to chase another championship again from here.
That sounds beautiful. Beautiful soliloquy on your part, must say. However, you defeated your own argument with that last sentence that you just threw out there. He'll come back in better shape. That is the indictment against him. See, what happens is you don't get to analyze just somebody's game. You get to analyze why there are deficiencies in the game. If you have deficiencies because there's just something that you needed to work on, like you get your handle better, get your jump shot better, or whatever the case may be, that's fine. Game 3, you're absolutely right. You get over that, you throw that aside. But what's going to live with Luka? More so, or just as much as complaining about the refs, and again, he didn't do that the last 2 games, really. So again, he made amends. But you looked at him, it's like, you got to get in your bag this offseason. You got to get yourself in shape. You got to commit yourself to being conditioned. That is not something any athlete should ever want to have said about them. That your conditioning played a role in impeding your progress from being even more elite than you showed. And we know that Luka is elite. He's a superstar, make no mistake about it. But the point is, when you look at a Jason Tatum and you look at a Jaylen Brown and you look at a Drew Holiday and a Derek White and you look at a Al Horford, for example, who finally won that chip, 38 years of age or whatever, you do find yourself asking, Kyrie I'll get to in a second when we get to Kyrie. But in Luka's case, the conditioning, the need to be in better shape and what have you, definitely is something that was being talked about at the NBA Finals. It's just a fact.
But when has Luka ever been in incredible shape?
Well, I'm saying to you, it's not about being in incredible shape, Andre. It's about looking at somebody and saying, okay, if you were at peak performance, I'm not talking about
like you didn't control everything you could control, essentially.
If you were, that is the ultimate. Anytime we're talking about greatness, that is the ultimate indictment. When I sit up there and I speak to Hall of Famers about these guys, that's one of the things they pay attention to. One of the great attributes that everybody accords to LeBron James is the man's always in shape. You got people writing stories about what he does to take care of his body, the sacrifices that he's willing to make. You got a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, but you got some guys, their game is something that they'll work on. But when you talk about being in that proper condition, you're going up against Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, boys, you got to be in shape. You got to have it. You got to have that wind, that conditioning. And we saw Luka playing at his pace or whatever, but we also saw him inhibited and limited to some degree because there's so much that he can do because the conditioning wasn't on the level of the competition he was going up against.
Luka had an absolutely historic playoff run.
Yes.
The fact that he came into the finals leading in points, rebounds, and assists amongst all players.
Right.
Absolutely. They were the 5th seed.
Yeah.
They come back and win 3 series without home court advantage. That is Luka. That is something we're going to remember. But the thing about it is what is holding Luka back, which is conditioning and is also his temperament with the referees, has been holding him back since he was a teenager. Now, he has overcome this many, many times. He won championships in Europe. He's gone to 2 conference, he's played, I think, 6 or 7 years in the NBA. He's gone to 2 conference finals and 1 finals. He is only 25. People criticize his defense fairly. Dallas has won hundreds of games with him playing bad defense, and they will win hundreds of games more. But I think the frustration with Luka is that he hasn't gotten those things right, and that isn't because he's young. He's been dealing with it and being told about it for a decade now.
So do you think he's self-aware to realize that it's an issue, that it's holding him back, or is it just like white noise?
Molly, this is a question that so many people who have worked with him and worked around him have asked, because he is self-aware about so many other things. There's no way you could be this dominant of a player without having great awareness. Those 2 things everybody has flaws. What's so frustrating about Luka is that these flaws are correctable. Look, if you're a great, great basketball player and you're 6'1", what are you going to do in a league of giants? Nothing you can do about that.
One last thing. What's the deal with the temperament? It's just like can't reel it in?
I'm telling you, there are scouts that I've talked to who've shown me scouting reports from when he was 15 years old, and they were like, won't shut up with the officials. I promise you, even though I wasn't in Spain, I promise you his coaches were like, Luka, stop it with the officials. It didn't just happen since he's been in the NBA or in Game 3.
I know there is something to be said for having flaws or having shortcomings, right? If kissing snakes is mine, that's fine. But you kind of said it, Wendy, right? You were like, he overcame it in Europe and he won championships. He's overcome it to get to conference finals. He's now made an NBA Finals.
He's actually, I don't think he's ever actually overcome it.
When your flaws are magnified in the NBA Finals, what did Jaylen Brown talk about when Jason Tatum got hurt and he didn't step up for his team? When Jason Tatum didn't step up in the finals, when your flaws or your shortcomings are magnified in the finals, it can only be held against you how you react from there. Like how Luka takes care of his body from here is what we can determine his image to be.
Yeah, but I thought we were asking the question in terms of what was going to be the narrative about somebody as you moved forward, looking at them going in the next season. Like, for example, I look at Luka and I say greatness. So, what does he have to do to make sure he can get to the next level? Because I'm looking at his game and it's pure and he has the capability. We see a championship on the horizon for him. Okay, so what's the thing that could hold him back? It's what we did with Tatum. It's what we did with Brown after Game 7 last year.
My
it's
point
what
is
we've
that's
done with
always
every
been
star.
Luka's narrative, though. He's not in great shape.
Yeah,
so I think the narrative for Luka stays the same.
But at some point, it's like catches up to you
But
when
not
you're
just
knocking
that.
at the door.
Not just that. We didn't pay attention to it that much because they hadn't gotten there. Like Golden State was in their way when they got to the conference finals. Or last year, they missed the playoffs because there was a whole bunch of stuff in Dallas that was in his way. Could he and Kyrie coexist? That was a question mark. Do you have the pieces before Kyrie around? Do you have the pieces around him necessary in order for him to? There's been a plethora of questions. I'm saying when you're talking about, it can only be answered. I'm telling you, when you come up short in the finals, but you were knocking on the door, we ask ourselves, what's the next step for you? The next step for him is him maximizing his potential because we all see it. That's his impediment.
And I'm just saying, as far as this finals run goes, the slight adjustment that he made in his temperament and in his defensive effort, as far as his image is concerned, because that's what we were asked about, that mini narrative is what you hope to grow for Luka. He made an adjustment. He gave more defensive effort. He wasn't in shape to do it enough, but he gave more defensive effort. He controlled his temperament, and now that mini effort in those 2 games needs to become the norm for Luka. And that's what the narrative is. Can he do what he did in these final 2 games as far as effort and as far as temperament
and it will
and
be
as far
easier
as defense,
for him to do
can he grow
if
that?
he's in shape. Because what do you do when you're operating with fatigue?
Yeah, you are whining and complaining.
There you go, because you're tired.
But that's the narrative. Can he do what he did in those 2 games, get in good shape, which has
think we're
always
saying
been
the
the
same
question
thing.
for Luka.
I think we're saying the same
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're saying the same thing.
I'm just curious who you feel like could actually get through to him on this subject.
I promise you, everybody's tried. And obviously the Mavericks.
Like, what about even other greats in the NBA?
You know, I don't know. You know, Messi.
Yeah.
Maybe Messi, because he grew up as he's I don't think he's interested in hearing from 70-year-old basketball players.
Before the finals, when they won the
Yeah.
conference finals against Minnesota, little small moment, people were laughing it off, and I'm not trying to imply that it was a big deal at all, but as we sit here talking about this subject, remember, Michael Finley, a former star with the Dallas Mavericks, who's now in the executive branch, didn't say a word, just walked over to Luka in the middle of him fraternizing with a couple of peeps while he was drinking the beer, and took the beer from him and walked away. And Luka just looked at him and just threw up his hand. Michael Finley didn't say anything, didn't make news out about it, didn't comment about it or whatever. You know, you drinking some beer. This is damn finals we about to go to. He didn't say anything. He just walked up to Molly and took it and walked away. So what does that tell you? That tells you is that, okay, in that moment, but that wasn't an aberration. That's something that you might do during the regular season. It's something that you might do from time to time.
Might not have been the first time Michael Finley took a beer.
We're being kind here, okay? Yeah. We ain't telling all his business. But the point is, that's something usually.
Yes, you have to make a
decision.
decision.
You don't do. You got to make a decision.
You got to make a decision. Who do you want to be? I mean, he's been pretty damn successful the way it is. But if you want to take it up that next
I
level,
honestly believe there will be a day in the future where we're sitting here talking about Luka in the role that
Luka will win the championship. There's no question he's going to win the championship.
There's no doubt. It's just,
All right.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Put them down, try to wear, I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA on the ESPN.